Okay, we are live. Welcome, everybody. This is a
Looks
soul. What?
looks like we've been live for 20 seconds already.
Oh, wow. So this is a soul purpose conversation. Whatever the episode is, it's like 13, 14. We're here, myself and Yan, who is a soul purpose alchemist, to talk about anything related to soul purpose, which is a school group that we have that we built about a year ago. I mean, depending on when you're watching this is September, the end of September 2025. In our Soul Purpose group, we are helping soul-led entrepreneurs on a mission to awaken the world, grow their business from a spiritual standpoint. And I feel like this offer in the way of serving is simply an accumulation of the life that I have lived. We're connecting dots where I didn't feel comfortable with the school system, developing employees, setting their somebody else is setting their income ceiling, and also the spiritual community and people who want to go inwards, not being able to express in this world fully. One, because of their belief that spiritual and business sort of contradict, and also many spiritually oriented, internal focus group of people tends to have sort of resistance around the idea of money, around the idea of success in a material way. This is an interesting topic. And I think my path has been to integrate that. So what we do is to really help people come back to their home, wholeness inside, and while they cultivate this identity to express themselves in this world, so they can impact people, helping whatever through the gift that they have, and to grow financially. And we have been growing in an exponential way. So we talk a lot about spirituality, universal laws. We had topic on belief, and anything related to subconscious, anything related to the mind, that allows us to really understand and embody who we are and who we are being in this world. Um, Yan is usually the one who comes up with the topic. And do you want to share with the audience, Yan, what are we going to be talking about? Or you have a question, or how do you want to initiate this?
So I guess it's a simple question of why why do so many people have a problem with the word God?
Yeah. I mean, I had one, right? I
Yes.
think so many people have a, yeah. So let me share my
Well,
background. Mhm.
yeah, because I mean, even from when we began, you didn't say it much, and you sort of hinted to the fact that you didn't say it much. But of late, you've been talking about God quite a lot since you've been working with Neil Donald Walsh.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. Let's start there, right? So, um, I mean, I had different like smaller books and content that inspired me to begin my spiritual path at the age of 17. But then I think that, I mean, Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield. But then right after that, Neil Donald Walsh. So Neil was probably one of the pivotal teacher that I come across at the age of 17, going to a bookstore. A lot of people know him as the author of Conversation with God. And I don't know how many books he wrote. Many, probably
Mhm.
close to 20. Um, but I actually encountered him when right after he published his first one. And I was waiting for the next one to be published. I think he wrote Conversation with God 1, 2, 3, and he had In Friendship with God 1, 2. I think that was the title in Japanese, but there might be a different kind of title in English. And and then I was a dancer, right? So I was moving the body. I was really into health. I was interested in the mind, and I got interested in when I explore a body, I became interested in the mind, and then when I explore a mind, I got interested in the soul, and then I explore soul, and then I started to go back to the mind because I realized that the body and soul just are, and the mind is the only thing that's in the way, or the mind is the gateway for the soul to really integrate and unite with the body, right? The spiritual part of us and the material part of us. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the mind is a bridge, basically. And I think that's how I see it. And I think even though it's this is a very interesting conversation because I was reading a book called Conversation with God, right? And I
How
was,
old were you?
how old am I?
How old
21.
were
Huh?
when you read that? How old were you?
17.
Hmm.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when I read that book, I resonated with me so much. Like those books that's spiritually driven, Jan, when I read those, it felt like it was talking something that I was feeling,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it sort of books that you they resonate because it enters immediately right into your private space, right? The ideas and the feelings and contemplation that I've been holding on to that I wasn't expressing to anybody, that is an impact, right? Like, okay, this person is talking about what I have been feeling. So that was huge for me. But the point of this conversation is that it's interesting how I felt connected to, but I didn't want to share that I was reading the book to people because it says conversation with God.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't make sense. But I did share with a few close friends who I knew who could understand the idea inside. So fast forward, I think we look at the world and people have a relationship with the term God, right? And for instance, I was in Peru, right? And when I was little, so they have a certain relationship with God.
Mm-hmm.
Japan is a little bit different, right? And I think when I came to the US and look at the world, um, people have different interpretation in the way that they're expressing as far as how they see God. And I think I didn't resonate with a lot of the quote unquote religious way because I never believed or felt resonating with having a power outside of you. And it's interesting, right? Even like 7 or 8 years ago, I even hesitated to talk about spirituality because I didn't want to be misunderstood that I'm talking about religion, right? So I guess my observation looking at the world is that this is something that Joe Dispenza says, right? Religion separated the world, science bring together. That's why he uses purposely scientific language, even though it's the same thing that they're talking about.
Mm.
Bob said
Interesting.
that if you go to wanting to understand the truth in the core of the life that we're living, the answer is always in the science of theology. That's what Bob often said, Bob Proctor. So these are really interesting, right? Because people are operating based on their assumption and the belief, and people have their belief and understanding of God. And I think the usage of the word God have has been deeply misunderstood and overused. People have all kinds of understanding, misunderstanding, and using that made me feel that I can be misunderstood easily. That's the reason that I hesitated for the longest time, right? But what's interesting thing is that, let's say, for instance, like a Russell Brunson talks about God, right? And whenever he talks about God, I found myself leaning into him. What is he gonna say, right? So I observe my own behavior of I do have resistance to that word, but depending on who is using and how it's being used, it drew me to wants to know more about. And even like for instance, I think the more the person is known as a business, not as a like a spiritual or religious, but the more the person is really into business and um, showing up in the world, succeeding in the business, and when that person uses the term God, it drew me because I wanted to know the perspective of it. But long
Mm.
story short, Jan, um, I think there are people who there are many group of people in the world, right? And one of them is they all kind of feel this there's something in the invisible, but they don't prioritize, but they focus on the building and the creation of the material. There are a group of people who actually worship God outside of them. For me, though, just to be transparent, by doing so, you're giving your own power away from you, and I think the God of my understanding, which I often use the term infinite intelligence of source, where we came from and we are always connected to, is something that's constantly being evolved. Even like I can remember Earl Nightingale, right? Mentor Bob Proctor, who started the personal development industry, talking about the importance of the relationship with God. Like he was, I can hear him in the radio or the YouTube video talking about that specific statement. So then I think, I explore and expanded that spiritual path, and I have gone through different spiritual practices, including Diamond approach. Probably Diamond approach comes from more of the Buddhism type of background, and you do different like triad work to do inquiry, but it
Mm.
is about accessing being. Yeah, accessing being and understanding personality. Diamond approach doesn't talk too much about the process of creating the personality based on the essence.
Ooh,
Mhm,
I have a question because you said somewhere once.
mhm.
I was listening to the recording of the workshop, and you said somewhere in the workshop that the soul creates the personality.
Right.
I would love you to elaborate on that.
So I don't know if I said exactly like you
Yeah,
said,
yeah, yeah.
but I said that in order for the soul to express in this relative realm, the only place and the way that the soul can express is through the mind, through the self, through personality. Otherwise, there's no expression. And then if you didn't have the body, the soul cannot experience in this physical realm.
Mhm.
So you hear me often saying express an experience, right? And you hear me often say, we're a spiritual being having a physical experience and having the psycho emotional intellectual mind. And I think where people get hung up on is when we have the idea and when we know that we are more than the individual body and the individual mind, a lot of the spiritual interest, curiosity, and tendency is for people to want to transcend because they know and believe that they're not this, you know, visible container, and they want to experience a different dimension life. But my understanding is that you can only experience when you have the mind, through the mind, and experience through the body. So when I say soul creates personality, you say,
Mm.
so what that means is that personality is necessary because it's the expression of the mind, and then the mind can choose, right? Who you want to be and what kind of identity you want to have. And in order for the soul to even survive in this relative realm, ego is necessary. That's how I look at it. So diamond approach was excellent work in order for me to tap into that expansiveness, to actually feel the being, the presence of who we are. And the work is focused on being in that state. But I didn't see any work of, okay, then that expansiveness, that being, how can we bring that as a part of the personality? So I guess for me, the being wasn't fully integrated into the doing, and it wasn't fully integrated into the fulfillment of the desire. That's something that, a lot of the spiritual practices. So for instance, many people who are really drawn to spirituality, they have the value in the present. They honor the present moment. They don't honor, or they don't really value too much in the achievement of things, right? The fulfillment of the desire. Even sometimes or often when people engage in the work of spirituality, having desire is not a good thing for them,
Mm.
right? Because they think that it's the product of the ego.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the way that I see that differently is that desire is a natural impulse of the urge of the soul. That's where it differentiates a little bit, right? I don't look at desire and fulfillment of desire as ego thing. If you if the desire is based on the gratification or the validation or impression to the world, that's an ego thing. But
Mm-hmm.
if the desire is you feel called to, I feel that I'm meant to do this to impact and inspire and touch the world, I see that as a soul thing, not the ego thing.
To create.
To create, because the more we create, the more we can use that as a gateway to unite the world, right? And like for instance, there are multiple views in everything, right? For instance, social media is great to connect the world, but if somebody doesn't know and it's not intentional in how you use it, it can harm those people, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same as money. Money is a great tool to connect and expand and reach, but depending on how you use it, it can harm somebody or harm the world, right? So every creation is very good if your intention is in a positive side, but it can harm us if the intention is not based on, is not so led. So I guess the point here, Jan, is that that's where it kind of distinguishes, the work of the soul purpose, because spirituality tends to, in general, spirituality tends to not honor too much of the desire, but we honor the desire as long as that desire is conducive to the unfoldment of the soul, right? That the mind needs to become more and more aware to meet that desire. And specifically, that means the belief need to be cultivated and expand in order for us to feel that this is true in our life for the manifestation and the desire to be fulfilled. And I feel that that is the process of unfolding life. And yeah, so the diamond approach is a fantastic practice, and I see a different aspect that I wanted to bring in, which is the reason that I no longer am part of the practice. But if we can come back to this conversation of God,
Mhm.
I
I
think
have a
I'm.
question when you're ready, but stick with your thoughts. I've written it down so I won't forget.
We have a question.
Hmm.
So I think I am interesting. So I hesitated to use the term God because I didn't want to be misunderstood that I am looking at God as something outside and to be seen just like I'm seeing people identifying so, right? But then because there's another side of God, right? The new layer of understanding of God that is embedded in us, that we are a part of us, an extension of us. And I think that the desire to share that perspective and an understanding of God became stronger than don't want to be misunderstood perspective. Does that make sense? So
Mm-hmm.
I wanna really voice out loud that this is the understanding of God that would enable you to set you free, right? What's the term? The truth will set you free. Yeah. So then I feel like I'm at the point where I want to share that as much as possible. And there are going to be people who are not going to like that idea, right? Because there's going to be people who say that, oh, God. Like even Kathleen was Kathleen Cameron was saying in one of the video that love is God. Yeah. And Marianne Williamson says so, right? And in the comment, I saw somebody saying, I'm sorry, but the love is not God. God created love. Somebody who believes in a different types of God, worship, nothing can be the same as God. God created everything. So then, love is not God. God created love. So it bothers them, right? So I'm gonna bother a lot of people by expressing this, but I think as long as I come from this place of I'm not trying to convince you, this is my perspective and it's working great, right? This perspective, see if you can incorporate to be able to live the way you want to, is the stance that I like to take, because I'm not in the business of, and then that's how religion separated the world, right? Because, oh, you don't believe in this, then you're not part of this, right? Um, I think that's an outdated approach, right? And then also, I feel that if I'm not doing things in a way that bothers somebody, I'm not expressing myself enough. And I see that as a good sign, right? It's going to trigger some people, right? But if I am triggering some people, I am actually expressing the truth for somebody who feel this as their truth. And I think I'm more feeling comfortable going there and sharing that. And then, like, I feel a enormous respect for Neil because that's what he has been doing, right? And
Mhm.
then now that I'm part of his sort of mentoring program, oh, I thought that I had my understanding of God, God of my understanding. Now it's taking me to a different layer, and then I now know why I'm taking this now. Yeah, that's amazing. And then it's
Mhm.
interesting that the mentoring of Neil started with a topic of change, right? And it didn't resonate with me. Means that why is this, why the whole focusing is in this, and it didn't resonate with me because I wasn't in that place, but I knew that he studied this way because when people who wants to do the mentoring program, when they have problem in their life, right? When people are bombarded with challenges and I need something, I need some spiritual stuff, and they come to spiritual, right? So I think Neil understands that, right? So that the whole program is, in my understanding, step why your life might be falling apart right now, but this is why. That's how it begins, right? But then, because my life is not falling apart at all, that idea didn't resonate, but it resonated because I'm about to change in a grandest way. The soul purpose group is about to change in the grandest way. So I'm applying the mentorship for that, right? The change beyond my current identity that I am called to step into is the change that I'm applying. And that change is going to be accomplished when I actually accept that deeper and new layer of God and begin expressing it.
Are you going to share the deeper layer with us? Or are you
Well,
still chewing on it?
the deeper layer of that is not something that I can say in one sentence.
Mm-hmm.
It's I can explain in 100 different ways, and it's not too much intellectual stuff, right? More of the knowing underneath. But I'm able to explain if you want me to. But do you have a question, you said?
So it's back on this sort of the previous topic, but the top of the question is, um, how do we get better at, well, I guess firstly better at understanding the difference between what I would call longing and desire. The personality or the ego longs and the soul desires. It's just, I wouldn't say that that's a fundamental definition. It's just how I like to look at it. It helps me to. How do we get better at that? And then the question sort of morphs a bit into, yeah, I guess we can start with how do you get better at that? And then what's interesting though is when you were talking about all of that stuff earlier, the I think, in this journey of spirituality, at least for me, is that there is a level of basics that I think, people need to take with them as they get into, because as I as I start to follow my intuition and my inspiration and my desire, it is equally matched by, not equally, but there is a decent level of attachment that can happen at the same time. There's like booby traps that happen there. And if I didn't have a, a decent, strong background in non-attachment and the basics of mindfulness, and presence and that type of stuff, um, it's something that I've encountered a couple of times, whenever I've really tried to pull on that energetic thread of creating and following my highest desire and that type of thing. Is that, and I think that people in the community would resonate with this because there's two sides to it. There's, I don't want to go live on the mountain, and abandon life and transcend. I do want to be, be and do. But there's definitely something. I'll talk about myself. There's definitely something that I encounter. I'm getting better at it, and that's, I guess, what I'm asking you about is. But there's something that I encounter when the doing starts to get really good and really exciting, and there's interesting things on the horizon, and it's unfolding, and it's very seductive in its own way, and before you know it, you're worried that you're going to lose it. You're worried, how do I make more? How do and you, next thing you know, you full blown back in the personality and full of fear. And so I think it's a I don't want to speak for anyone else, but I do notice that other people have experienced this, like that it's like a booby trap in this side of the, if we're not going to go live on the mountain and we want to be and do, you have to take the basics with you, as far as I believe.
Are you asking how to are you asking how to not to lose the being in the process of doing? Is that
Yes,
yeah?
beautiful. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think I mentioned a little bit in the workshop last week, a little tiny bit secret. The the difference between, we can explain this in a multiple from different angles, right? The difference between the being and the doing can be described as the difference between the intuitive mind versus the rational mind. Yeah. The logical mind is what does the doing, right? So you think in a critical way to identify a spot, right? So the logical mind, the rational mind wants tangibility, tangible stuff. That's
Mhm.
what the logical and rational mind is, what thinks about the future as an idea, right? And the the tendency that I have witnessed in the process and the practice of being is that when people this is very fun to actually explain. People, the mind is what's in the way, right? The mind is always what's in the way and the only thing that is in the way. And I don't think the answer is in removing the mind. So many people are
Interesting.
overwhelmed by their thinking, right? That's why they do the meditation. Or when people are, what stresses people out, what makes people overwhelmed, what makes people frustrated, it's never the circumstance. Okay, that's gonna trigger people, right? And it's never the circumstance. Yeah, people gonna comment, what about this situation, right? It's the thoughts about the situation, that meaning that you're attaching about the situation, that is creating the experience, right? So the stress and overwhelm and all that, it is the thoughts that the mind is doing that's creating the experience, not the event itself. So then people want a vacation because they're tired of their own thinking, not their life, right? They're not tired of their life, they're tired of their thinking. Then the natural inclination is to pause a little bit, because they believe that in order to shift out of the pattern thinking, they need to stop thinking. And stop thinking is to pause, to empty the mind, or to change the environment so they don't need to be thinking about, because the thoughts come from the environment that they have been in. So if they change the environment, because the environment was the thing that they believed that was creating the thoughts, now you're in a different environment with vacation, you get to create a different thought so they can take a break from it, right? That's a natural tendency that most people think, until you realize that that thought was actually being initiated from the inside, not from the environment. Now, then, for people who wants to practice being, is often around releasing those thoughts and observing those thoughts, being outside of those thoughts, and the whole idea in the conversation is about, okay, let's pause a little bit, right? Pausing is, for the rational mind, is to stop doing things, right? So if you need to pause in order to be, by stop doing, that pausing of the being is a perception of the rational mind what being is, right?
Mm.
For the rational mind, being means to pause and not do. But the being doesn't think that you don't need to stop in order to be, because I'm already here. Does that make sense? For the doing, let's imagine that you have two characters inside of your head or inside of your presence, right? Mr. Doing and Mr. Being, right? And and then Mr. Doing think that, you know what, I'm busy, I'm stressed out with all the thing. I'm wanting to fulfill the desire and I need a little break. Okay, doing think that in order to be, I need to stop doing. That's what the doing, the mental chatter think. But Mr. Bean, not Mr. Bean, Mr. Bean, right, knows, well, you can choose whether you want to keep doing or stop doing, but I have been here for the entire time because I am being. I cannot be anywhere else, but I'm here being. Does that make sense? So the doing rational mind thinks that I need to stop doing in order for me to be. But if you can step into the being, well, I'm here being, you can keep doing and I can still be. Yeah. So that's a different way of explaining. But I think that the point is that if we practice living in and from that being, I don't believe that we need to stop doing in order to be. And if somebody needs a little like a tool to be able to enter this, is to begin exercising the mind to retrain that being has nothing to do with not doing.
And I appreciate and love all of that. But the what happens when you start to get like you get attached to the outcome in this whole process? You start to feel fear, and you're worried you're going to lose it, or you're worried that it's not enough, or you want to make more, or so you lose contact with the being because you end up in a fear personality sort of
Yeah,
state.
yeah, yeah. So I think a part of the understanding that we must have, understanding what being doesn't lack anything,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Being is a fullness of it,
mhm,
right? So when somebody is the best way, Jan, for somebody who has a tendency to be attached to something, because who gets attached to something when the mind begin believing in lack?
mhm,
That's the only moment that we get attached to. If you believe and feel the experience of having an abundance, there's no need to be attached to because you're already full, right?
mhm,
So a part of embodying the being is embodying the having an abundance. It's the same thing.
mhm,
So then the practice and like a specific practice that I can recommend to people is that, first of all, being is motion. Okay, let me share one of the revelation that I have, a deeper layer understanding of God. So one thing that struck me a lot is when Neil said God is a process. And it's a simple statement and many people might not resonate with it, right? So God is a process. So God is movement that's happening all the time in this physical realm. It's a process. Everything is God, right? There's nothing that God is not. So this expression of us is God. This room that we're in is God. The world that we're living is God. There's nothing and nowhere that the God is not. It's the process. Life is movement. God is life. So those are all synonymous, right? And being is a process. Being is movement, which is the opposite of stopping and pausing. Does that make sense? So
mhm,
when we begin understanding that being and being in the moment and being actually still is not the same as stopping, but is to be with and in motion and a movement. Then you begin separating. Now, when you begin feeling that motion in the being, you begin activating a different part of your mind, shifting
Mm-hmm.
from the rational to intuitive, from specific to whole, and you begin able to embody the being in the doing, because those are not two separate things.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So it's also the rational mind that for whatever reasons is the creator of lack.
Yes.
Perhaps it sees the environment and this, yeah.
Yeah. Rational mind tends to wants to focus on the senses for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's gonna help you to think rationally,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you can see clearly, from where to where, what to what.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did I answer? I mean, I
Yes.
answer you the attachment piece, right?
Yeah. 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 Perfectly. Um,
At the beginning, though, Jan, sorry, people might need to form a structure practice in
yes.
order for them to being in a habit and creating a new default state to operate in a new way. But eventually, the process and the work that needs to be done is for this to become a way of being, not
Yeah.
a task. Yeah,
Yeah. You put the books down. You actually even almost forget them.
yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah. I love that. That's something that we spoke about on the alchemy call, me and Tom. It's this there's levels of consciousness, and that you definitely start with like some type of like quite rigid practice, but eventually you want to get to a point where it's just it's natural. It's the it's part of the wholeness.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think all of these things, Jan, that we're talking about is actually a conversation about God.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I'm ready to piss a lot of people off, I guess, by,
Mm-hmm.
by sharing this new perspective. And I feel the need to step into this new element of me. And I feel that that's what God wants me to do in order for the soul purpose group to expand to the next level. That's how I feel. That's exactly the reason that I'm with Neil right now. That's how I feel. So the
Mm-hmm.
change that uh, I am working and dealing with is not like a, struggling in life, but for the soul purpose group to expand to that kind of change is what I'm applying his work for. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you have any question or any comments around that?
No, no, no. I thought that was lovely. Mm.
Great.
Very wholesome.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. Um, Anybody who's interested in the soul purpose group, we have different trainings around how we help people build their soul-led business. Check the link below. And we do events once a month. We did the last month we did on energetics of money. This month we did belief. Next month coming October, we're going to be doing universal laws in action. I'm going to be talking about a deeper understanding of the law of circulation, law of assumption, law of supply and demand, and more. Those are going to be probably the three main laws that I'm going to be talking about. But check the link below, and then we are a wonderful community, people coming from all over the world. There's a little less people from South America, I think, but they're from Europe, Africa, Asia, Australia, US, and it keeps expanding. So interesting people are in the group. So If you are a soul-led entrepreneur who feel called to awaken the world, check the link below, and then we will see you inside. And we're gonna come back to maybe we can talk something related to the universal law next week, right?
Next week.
Jan? A little
Mhm.
bit. So thanks, Jan, for joining and for the wonderful choice of the topic each week. And everybody, see you inside of the group, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you.